What up, though? What's happening? I'm Ross. I want to talk today about remote workers. I got a story out of the Wall Street Journal that says remote workers are more likely to be laid off. So it's not something that's, earth shattering. I think most people know that. But now with the job market slowing down and the employers getting somewhat of the upper hand, it seems that they're now more able and willing to say this out loud. So let's get into this Wall Street Journal article. Remote workers bear the brunt when layoffs hit. New data shows fully remote employees are more likely to be let go than their peers. They're also more likely to quit. So I guess that goes both ways, right? Laying off employees is complicated. New data suggests that managers tend to have an easier time showing remote workers the door. Workers logging on from home 5 days a week were 35% more likely to be laid off in 2023 than their peers who put in office time, according to an analysis of 2 million white collar workers conducted by the employment data provider Live Data Technologies. So 2 million workers is a pretty large data set, and 35% more likely. That's quite a bit of risk in there. Quite a bit of risk in there. So I'd also like to know who funded the study, though, because if this were funded by CEOs who just want to scare their workers into going back to work, but I'm pretty sure this is probably accurate. When a hiring manager gets news they have to cut 10% of staff, it's easier to put someone on a list you don't have a close personal relationship with, says Andy Challenger, Senior Vice President at Challenger, Gray, and Christmas, an outplacement firm. Much of the disparity, he said, is that it's simply harder to build attachments to people you don't see face to face. And yeah, it's pretty obvious that would be easy. Somebody's not coming in the office, kind of easier to let them go, right? They're not even in here. You don't have to face them, see their face when they're let down as their job goes away. Some companies have been more intentional about putting remote workers on the chopping block. Wayfair, the online home goods retailer, recently told employees that remote workers would be more likely to be affected in company layoffs. Executives also told staff they believe most workers should be in an office most days. We went overboard in hiring during the strong economic period and veered away from our core principles, Chief Executive Niraj Shah wrote in an earlier staff memo. Wayfair said while the company believes its best work is done in person, it will continue to have remote roles when warranted. Right, and I think right now, if they want you in the office, this is the time to do it because they see the job market slowing down. They're doing layoffs within their own company, so it's going to be one of those things where if that's what they really wanted to do was get people back in the office, they're going to use this as leverage, and they're going to get rid of those people that A, are remote, or B, that refuse to come back into the office. So is that right or wrong? I don't know. And it doesn't say here anything about Wayfair having data saying that the remote workers were any more or less efficient. It just says they think that they believe the best work is done in person. So I don't know if they have that data or that's just somebody's personal opinion. Out of sight, out of mind. Given that many layoffs over the past year have been concentrated in tech, a remote friendly industry overhired during the pandemic, it's not surprising that people working exclusively from home have been hit harder, says George Penn, managing vice president at Gartner, an advisory firm who consults with companies on workforce structuring. You got to think it's easier to hire people remote. It's easier to get them onboarded, I guess, because they wouldn't be in person per se. Logistically is what I mean. I don't necessarily mean with them accepting the culture or anything, but logistically. So it is like they say, easy come, easy go, right? Those remote workers are also, it said, more likely to quit a job. So it kind of goes in both directions. Other managerial perceptions could be at play too, he adds. A Gartner survey in 2021 found that 68% of executives and managers believed in-office workers were higher performers than remote workers. In Albuquerque, New Mexico, Leanna Robertson, a 56-year-old who was laid off this month from her client support job, says she struggled in her fully remote role to get on the same page as her manager. Bosses don't think you're actually doing work because they can't see what you're doing, she says. They assume everything takes 10 minutes, and why haven't you finished yet? Well, and I let me just say something about that. You, as a remote worker, it's kind of your job to illustrate to your boss what you're doing. And I think when I started working from home as well, maybe I struggled with that a bit at first, is that I felt like maybe I was being a little bit micromanaged. But at the end of the day, I decided to be proactive, and I started taking account for what I was doing. I created slides just to show, snippets of what I was doing, and I'd always have it on hand. So in staff meetings, during other meetings, at any point in time, given time, if my boss or anybody, his boss or anybody asks me what I'm doing, I can pull up a PowerPoint that shows you pretty much all the things that I'm working on, the obstacles, the things that I'm doing, time frames to when I think I'll complete those things, right? And it may be a little bit more of a burden, but it's not once you get on top of it and once you start doing it. And it gives me a way that I can, at a glance, show anybody what I'm working on and what I'm doing and update them on where I'm at in that situation. So honestly, that's good practice if you're going into the office as well, but it's definitely key if you're going to be remote. Yes, you're out of sight. So you need to make sure that they understand all those things you're working on, and you can't take it personal. In fact, I would say if you're a remote worker, you should over communicate. It should be overly communicated what you're doing because you're not in their face every day. Ron Porter, a corn consultant of workforce issues, says he's hearing from clients that fully remote workers are getting cut more frequently than their in-office hybrid colleagues. Part of it, he says, is natural human reluctance. Managers feel to cut those they have to face in person. It is also possible that workers who are remote 100% of the time may be more marginal to start with, he adds, with managers preferring to keep their strongest employees doing the most important tasks close to them at the office when possible. I don't kind of get that because that would indicate that, the remote workers that are 100% marginal to start with. Why would they be marginal to start with? Why would you hire somebody if they were going to be marginal? But I can understand where you're going to get that personal bond with somebody that's working directly with you in the office. But what if the boss is the one that's out of the office? Easy come, easy go. Alyssa Sieski, 40, a talent acquisition specialist based in San Antonio, says that as a fully remote worker, she's aware of the risk. They're easy to get rid of you. Can't put a face to the name. There's no personal connection, she says, of workers like herself. When Sieski was laid off at the end of 2022 from her fully remote role at a semiconductor company, she says her manager was based in England. She said she wasn't surprised. Still, she says that as the mother of 2 young children, she's willing to take on that prospect of instability for the flexibility of remote work. It's worth it, she says, adding that she also likes the feeling of autonomy and the ability to focus on working from home offers. And I would agree with her. I think from my perspective, I have the best of both worlds because I'm right down the street from the office, the main office of the company I work for. So if ever need be, I can get into the office. And honestly, I've been there so long. If they did ask me to come back for what I make and what I do, I would go sit in the office. I did that for 12 years at the company before I ever went remote. So it's not like I'm unknown to the office environment in that particular office. So I get to see the best of both worlds, but I can see where it would be different for somebody that started remote and they're nowhere near the office, right? So you've got that disconnect. So yeah, but you're also going to feel the employer may feel a certain type of way, but so will the employee. It's like, hey, I'm remote, so I don't have any connection to these people. I'm going to do my job, but if something better comes along, hey, you know what? I'm going to go grasp it. David Rich, a recruiter in supply chain industry, says that especially in today's weaker job market, he cautions candidates to keep their eyes open on all remote roles. We warn them, easy come, easy go, he says. A company is going to invest in someone who's investing in them. Remote workers are also more likely to quit, according to Live Data Technologies. 12% of fully remote workers left their company and began a new job within 2 months of 2023, compared with the 9% of those who worked on hybrid or in-person basis. So, and again, like I was saying before, it works for both sides of it. Like it says in this article, easy come, easy go. Those people that are hired remotely, they're not as connected to the company. They don't have those personal relationships, right? Some CEOs say that while they personally don't look at an employee's remote work status when determining job cuts, they understood why work from home status could put them at higher risk. Other data and studies indicate that executives are rewarding in-office employees with promotions and favorable assignments. Yeah, and that's one thing you have to consider too. If you're a remote worker, it may not necessarily be them letting you go, but it may be that, hey, these people are getting promoted because they're closer to the power structure than I am being a remote. So that is one thing you'd have to take into consideration too. What's the opportunity cost of being remote? If you have a person working in finance who's not coming into the office, why wouldn't you hire the same person in India or the Philippines? Said Christian Ulrich, chief executive of a real estate company, Jones Lang LaSalle, noting that in many cases, overseas workers can do the same job for less money. If you don't see anybody at all, you literally may forget how valuable that person is. And again, I think he's dead on. He's spot on here. This is why I said earlier that you as a remote worker, you need to be staying on top of what you're doing. You need to always be able to present that at any given time. I think your presentation skills are key being a remote worker. You should want to be presenting what you're doing to people. You should want people to be asking what you're doing. You should want to give those type of presentations so that they know what you're doing and they know the value that you're bringing to the table. Because if you're just trying to work in a bubble quietly, that may work, but I think it's better to over communicate and let people know what you're doing, know what you're working on, so that they, first of all, and that builds some type of rapport too. They can trust you more if you're always coming to them, telling them, updates on what's happening, and you're letting them know, versus a remote worker who's kind of disconnected and they're just trying to do their thing, and they don't want a whole lot of supervision and they don't manage that relationship with their manager. You might be at more risk. And I think overall, if you're remote, you're going to be at risk anyway. So, but we're all at risk. It doesn't mean like you're in office does not guarantee you a job either. So in addition to Wayfair, the Wayfair thing in this study, I want to pinpoint another thing that Bank of America come out with. They sent a letter of education. They got to re-educate their employees about office workers that weren't coming into the office. So just real quick, I'll get into that, and I'll leave a link to both of these stories in the description. And this is out of the Business Insider. Bank of America sends letters threatening disciplinary action to employees who aren't coming into the office, by Lakshmi Varanasi. Bank of America is issuing warning letters to workers who aren't coming into the office. The bank has been sending letters to correct workplace attendance since late 2023. They're sending letters of education. Failure to follow the workplace excellence expectations applicable to your role within 2 weeks of the date of this notification may result in further disciplinary action, read one letter of education that was seen by the Financial Times. Right? Why didn't they just say what they're trying to say anyways? Like, failure to follow the workplace excellence expectations applicable to your role within 2 weeks. Why don't they just say, if you don't come into the office, if you're supposed to come into the office and you don't come into the office within 2 weeks, you're going to get fired, right? Why not just say that? Since October 2022, Bank of America has been requiring the majority of its employees come into the office at least 3 days a week. Those in more client-facing roles such as investment banking and sales and trading have been asked to come in 5 days a week with some flexibility, right? And I get it. If you're facing customers and that's your job, you're going to have to be in the office to face those customers, right? So customers want to be able to, especially when you're dealing with large sums of money like investment banking, customers are going to come lay eyes on you. So I can get it, but I don't want to go through the whole article. It's just more par for the course that it's just more evidence that these companies are trying to force workers and are forcing workers back into the office. It's of note that Bank of America just released their earnings, and their earnings are down, I think, like 10% from this time last year. So they're going to have to probably lay some people off. So again, it's kind of them being in a position, well, if we're gonna have to lay people off anyways, we're going to target these people who are resisting our attempts to bring them back into the office. So just par for the course. Like I said, if you're a remote worker, you need to be doing as much as you can to highlight what you're doing, try to build rapport, even if you are on remote, and be prepared to leave, because you understand you're probably the first on the chopping block if people have to go. So always be prepared for that. There comes some downside to working remotely. So there's a lot of upside, but there is some downside to it. So if you made it this far, consider mashing the like button. If this isn't your first video with me, consider subscribing. My name is Ross. Peace.